Okay, boys, tell me a little bit about this Abraham Lincoln statue here in Dixon, Illinois.
This is Abraham Lincoln when he was in the Illinois State Militia during the Black Hawk Wars. He enlisted in 1832 at Richland Creek, and he eventually made his way up to Dixon, Illinois, which the site we're standing on with the statue, this is basically where Fort Dixon was. And this is basically where the town of Dixon was officially established.
Okay.
During the Black Hawk War, Lincoln was a captain of a company on there. After about 90 days, he was discharged from the company and enlisted as a private in another company for another 90 days. Of course, the war was over by the time he got to where the actual fighting was, which was farther to the north here. And of course, Chief Black Hawk then had to cede his remaining territory and had to basically go across the Mississippi River to comply with the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This is the founder of the city of Dixon, Illinois. His name was John Dixon. His nickname was the Father, as he was basically seen as a wise old man. He came to the Dixon area originally around 1822-ish, and he liked it, so he stayed there. Around 1830, he built a tavern. He built a tavern and a ferry crossing here on the Rock River, and basically was where the city of Dixon was founded, this little lot here. And in 1832, when Chief Black Hawk began his recross the Mississippi River into now the state of Illinois, it was turned into a kind of an ad hoc fort. So Fort Dixon, so you can see there were fortifications around it. And this was mainly just to keep the Sac and Fox Indians who were attacking the settlers on here. They would gather in these forts, protection from the militia and the regular army. And basically the war was basically a cat and mouse game with brief but intense skirmishes. And it was probably the only major battle or war, Indian wars, that took place in the state of Illinois. And it began in April 1832 and ended in August 1832.
Abraham Lincoln was stationed here during the Black Hawk War in 1832 as captain of volunteers. On April 21st, 1832, he enlisted at Richland Creek, Sangamon County, and was elected captain. He was mustered into state service at Beardstown on April 22nd and into United States service at the mouth of the Rock River May 3rd. At the mouth of the Fox River on May 27th, he was mustered out of service and on the same day re-enlisted as a private in Captain Elijah Ellis's company. At the expiration of this enlistment, he re-enlisted again on June 16th at Fort Wilburn in Captain Jacob Early's company, and was finally mustered out of service on July 10th, 1832 at Whitewater River, Wisconsin.
All right. August 21st, Saturday, the day of the first debate. In the morning of what was going to be a hot and dry day, Abe goes to Wash's barbershop in Morris before he would leave town. A friendly conversation takes place and Abe asks the barber questions about his life. After the haircut, the lucky barber closed shop and went to see the debate. Lincoln departed Morris for Ottawa on a special train of 17 cars carrying his supporters from Cook and Will counties. When they arrived at the Ottawa station via the Rock Island Railroad, or Chicago, Rock Island and Pacific, Mr. Lincoln was escorted by John Lowell in a horse-drawn carriage, evergreen in color. John was only 18 at the time. Mr. Lincoln was taken to the debate site at Washington Square and then to Mayor Joseph Otis Glover's house at 810 Columbus Street, located about a block south on the east side of the street. The horse-drawn carriage has been on display at the LaSalle County Historical Society Museum in Utica, Illinois. The greatly anticipated debate in Washington Square started later than the 2 p.m. schedule. But finally, at about 2:15 between that and 2:30, Douglas took the stage in front of the standing audience, and the debate lasted until 5:30 p.m. An estimated 12,000 people were present at the debate, according to area newspapers. No chairs for the people, and because of the crowd size, perhaps only 1,000 at most could hear them speak. In the first debate, Douglas, the popular Illinois senator, spoke for an hour, and then Lincoln for an hour and a half, with the last half hour to Douglas. It was a heated debate and the sparks flew. Douglas boldly asserted his position, quote, "Mr. Lincoln and his party are trying to array all the northern states against the South to excite a sectional war between the free states and the slave states," unquote. Lincoln responds, quote, "I'll leave it to you to say whether, in the history of this government, this institution of slavery has not always failed to be a bond of union, and on the contrary, been an apple of discord and an element of division," unquote. After the debate, Lincoln was carried off on the shoulders of his supporters. Dinner was prepared at Mayor Glover's home, and afterwards they went to the courthouse lawn in the evening and listened to his friend Owen Lovejoy speak, an abolitionist from Princeton, Illinois. When the speaking finished, Lincoln was accompanied back to the Glover home by a torchlight procession. He would stay there that Saturday night and all of Sunday and Sunday night. August 22nd, Sunday. Lincoln and Owen Lovejoy remain in Ottawa as guests of Mayor Glover. After breakfast and much conversation, he later makes time to write a letter to J.O. Cunningham about his impressions of the previous day's debate. He wrote, quote, "Douglas and I, for the first time this canvass, crossed swords here yesterday. The fire flew some, and I am glad to know I am yet alive. There was a vast concourse of people, more than could get near enough to hear," unquote. Douglas and Lincoln in previous years, 1848, worked together as strong advocates to create the Illinois Central Railroad, the first land-grant railroad by the government. They were also supporters of the I&M Canal project, which was completed in 1848, 10 years previous. But on the issue of slavery, they strongly disagreed. August 23rd, Monday. Lincoln's schedule before the next debate on the 27th was a busy one, and invitations for him to speak, attend meetings, and more kept him moving from town to town. He boarded a Chicago Rock Island and Pacific train, or the Rock Island, in Ottawa at 3 a.m., bound for Henry, Illinois, passing through Utica, LaSalle, Peru, Spring Valley, Bureau, Putnam, Sparland, and then arriving in Henry. Along the way, a clear view of the canal between Utica and LaSalle must have caught his eye, and was proud to see such great transportation progress between canals, rivers, and railroads. It could have been quite possible for Lincoln to have traveled from LaSalle to Henry on a steamboat, but we have seen no records of him doing so. On this 23rd day of August, he penned a letter to Ebenezer Peck of Chicago, asking Peck and Judd to meet him at Freeport to discuss question technique Douglas introduced at Ottawa. When he later arrived at Peoria, he boarded the train of the Peoria and Occoquan Railroad en route to Galesburg, Illinois. That distance is about 48 miles. As to where Lincoln spent the night of the 23rd is still a question mark to me. An answer is welcome. However, if he had his special train with him, he may have slept in a sleeping car and not a hotel. He may have stayed at Peoria, but I have not seen it in my limited research. August 24th, Tuesday. Abraham Lincoln visited Galesburg. He arrived via the Peoria and Occoquan Railroad at 3:30 p.m. He visited the Bancroft House Hotel adjacent to the depot, and there he spoke to an interested crowd of spectators, asking them to, quote, stand fast, unquote. Lincoln also toured the downtown business district, speaking with citizens along the way. Lincoln departed on the train later that day, bound for Augusta, Illinois, about 75 miles away. August 25th, Wednesday. Lincoln had earlier spoken in Augusta at a nominating convention for the Republican Party at the Presbyterian Church in Augusta. The convention adjourns, and an audience of approximately 1,200 people gather at a beautiful grove in the suburbs of the town to hear Lincoln deliver a speech. Lincoln begins speaking at about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, focusing his remarks on the slavery issue. In spite of the rainy weather, most of the audience stays to listen to the 2-hour speech, even the ladies, of whom there were a large number present. They kept their seats until the speech was finished. His first visit to Macomb was not expected, and he just needed a place to collect his thoughts and prepare for the coming debate in Freeport. The new hotel, named the Randolph House, captured his interest and was generally regarded to be the best between Chicago and Quincy. Lincoln would spend the night there. He rested in room 31 and focused on his upcoming debate 2 days later with the, quote, little giant, unquote, Stephen A. Douglas. The room charge was $2.50. When Lincoln first arrived Macomb from Augusta, about 25 miles north, at midday, the courthouse bell was rung, and word spread that he would speak, and thus gave a short talk from the veranda of the hotel. Newspaper reports that Lincoln delivers his remarks in a relaxed manner, and that, quote, his speech was more like an earnest conversation with his old Whig friends, unquote. The reports are that the crowd was enthusiastic, and a multitude gathered there to hear him. August 26th, Thursday. On this morning, Abe went for a walk around Macomb with his friend James K. Maggi. His friend insisted Mr. Lincoln get a photograph image taken of him in ambrotype at T.P. Pearson's studio near the Hotel Randolph House. When he sat in front of the modern contraption, Lincoln was reported to have asked, quote, well, do you want to take a shot with me with that thing? Unquote. He was then handed a mirror so he could, quote, fix up, unquote, but he declined, saying, "It wouldn't be much of a likeness if I fixed up any." Abraham was famous for his rather casual manner of dress and unruly shock of dark hair. Lincoln then checked out of the Randolph house and ultimately was bound for Amboy, Illinois, which in total was about 170 railroad miles. He boarded the train in Macomb, passing through Galesburg, Kewanee, Princeton, and on to Mendota, where he changed trains from the Chicago-Burlington-Quincy Railroad to the Illinois Central Railroad, and then went 15 miles to Amboy, where he would give a speech and spend the night before his second debate in Freeport. He might have spent the night on a special sleeping car that the Illinois Central owned. They did have one called the Amboy. August 27th, Friday. Lincoln arrives at 10 a.m. on a special train of 12 cars from Amboy and Dixon. He is welcomed by a booming cannon salute and a crowd of 2,000 people, and they escort him to the Brewster House, which is, by the way, where Douglas also stayed. Lincoln responded to a reception speech of T.J. Turner there. At 2 p.m. he rides to the scene of the debate in a box-shaped Conestoga wagon drawn by 6 white horses. The afternoon is cold and dismal, but the rain holds off. Lincoln began the debate with an hour, then Douglas responded for 90 minutes, and Lincoln closed with 30 minutes. Note: that morning, Lincoln with his friends and advisors, Joseph Medill, editor of the Chicago Tribune, Norman B. Judd, chairman of the Republican State Committee, and Congressman E.B. Washburn of Galena arrived from Dixon on a special Illinois Central train of 12 crowded cars. It was while traveling on the train from Dixon to Freeport that morning that Lincoln is reported to have reached an important decision. After leaving Dixon, he handed Medill a sheet on which he had written 4 questions he proposed to ask Douglas. Medill studied them carefully and then advised Lincoln to omit the second question, which was, quote, "Can the people of a United States territory in a lawful way exclude slavery from its limits prior to a formation of a state constitution?" Unquote. The question Medill felt would play into Douglas's hands, and by giving him an opportunity to expound his popular sovereignty theory. Lincoln looked out the train window a while in meditation. Then he turned to Medill and said, quote, "Joe, I respect your advice, but I can't go along with you on that question. I intend to spear it at Judge Douglas this afternoon." Unquote. Medill, Washburn, and Judd all tried to persuade him not to, but Lincoln's mind was made up, and it eventually was the right decision in the very long run, but not the short term. He lost the Senate election but divided the Democrat Party on the slavery issue and his standing in the South, and thus ended up winning the presidency in 1860. The impact of the debates were felt across the country. August 28th, Saturday. Abe Lincoln departs Freeport on the special Illinois Central train and heads south to El Paso, Illinois, about 130 miles south. There he would catch a train of the Peoria and Aquaqua Railroad on to Peoria. He had to wait an hour in El Paso in order to catch a train west to Peoria. A crowd gathered, and he made a short speech. Was Lincoln in Mendota? This question has been asked by the residents of the town, wishing to claim some fame from Lincoln, and we can now clearly see that during the debates he traveled to Freeport and back from Freeport via Mendota, stopping both times in Mendota because all passenger trains stopped here. Other dates he came through Mendota are October 28, 1858, and mid to late July 1859. Those are factual and proven. During July 1859, for tax issues against the Illinois Central, Abe and an entourage conducted an inspection tour of over 705 miles of the company's railroad properties. They traveled the entire Illinois Central system for 9 days during daylight hours only to assess all the properties of the Illinois Central, whom he was their lawyer. Therefore, we conclude Lincoln walked in and around the Illinois Central Passenger House and Freight House and various railroad structures, trackage, etc., to assess its value. The following dates are logical because they were towns and cities on the Illinois Central line, but yet not proven. July 17, 1857 at Dixon, August 15, 1856 at Polo, Illinois, and July 16, 1856 at Dixon, Illinois again. The Nachusa house in Dixon, Illinois is where Lincoln stayed a few times, as evidenced by the guest book seen by our friend Harry Schaller, a Mendota resident and first president of the Mendota Railroad Museum. In the 1940s, he witnessed it as a Boy Scout. The Nachusa house still stands today. The whereabouts of the guest book is a mystery. The other questions are, did Abe Lincoln spend the night in Mendota? Well, we don't know for sure. There are no records, but there was a Mendota house. These, quote, houses were usually a lodging place. Did Lincoln stay a night on one of the dates listed above? The mystery continues and evidence is needed. The late Norma Mulock had told me Lincoln did stay at the Mendota house. Once again, nothing has surfaced to verify that claim. Research continues, but Mendota can claim Lincoln stopped here.